Men are not okay, but I think that's okay. Today's video is inspired by a string of articles that have been written about and released the past couple of days about what's wrong with men. There've been articles written by women about men, where are you, in the dating scene. Disney just released something about how they're trying to get their male audiences back. Everyone wants to know, where are the men? What's wrong with men? Are men okay? First, I don't believe in this whole collectivist thing, right? Like, we're all individuals to a certain degree, but yes, you can kind of make generalized statements based off of different, demographic groups, yada, 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 right? Cool. So are men okay? I don't think men are okay, but I do think that it is okay that men are not okay. And we need to kind of take a step back. And everyone that's kind of telling men that they need to get their shit together, or they need to, do X, Y, and Z, that advice isn't really helping. I think there is a crisis in masculinity, just, being honest. I think there was a path that men used to walk in America, in many societies, Western societies, that the path that men used to walk, the role that men used to take, I believe that that path has been, for better or for worse, removed. Or, for the very least, that path that men were supposed to walk on, we have expanded that path for almost anyone to walk on, right? And that path would be what? It would be, as a man, you're supposed to go to school if you can afford it. If you can't, you're supposed to go ahead and get a job. You're supposed to find a woman, you marry her, you have children, you provide for your family and your children, and then you die. And then with the rise of women, feminism, right? Women became self-sufficient, even though they're not really self-sufficient, but women started going to school, women started to work. And so really the advice that you give your son and your daughter is kind of the same, which is, hey, go to school, get an education, get a good job, then you get married, right? And so there's nothing really about what the role of a man that is distinct and separate from the role of a woman, while there is still a distinction, if a woman wants to, as far as the role of a woman than a man, meaning a woman can have children. Right. And I know women hate to get reduced to their body parts, whatever. And I get that. But again, it's something that you can do, but men cannot do. But everything that men can do, at least in the day to day, women can do. Right. Women can go to the same office job that a man can go to. Right. You see women now, working construction, thanks to technology and innovation. Right. We have all these machines and stuff. So you don't really have to be as big and strong as you used to be. Right. So women are able to occupy masculine spaces in ways in which men cannot, or are hesitant to occupy feminine spaces, right? So technically speaking, men could get involved in like child rearing, even though there's that weird thing that as a man where everyone thinks that you're a predator, so you don't want to get involved in anything child related because it's creepy. But you know what I mean? There are places, nursing, right? And men kind of have, their numbers in nursing has grown, but you understand what I'm trying to say. The path that men are supposed to walk down is not the path that our fathers walked down. It's not the path that our grandfathers walked down. And so everyone is kind of looking at us, pointing fingers like, what are y'all doing? You should get it together. Women are saying you guys should be more emotional and feminine like we used to be. You have men of the past saying you guys need to be more masculine and get your shit together. And my generation and the poor guys underneath me, we're all confused. And I think it's okay for all of us to be confused. You guys know I've taken a step back from my podcast that I was doing, and I made a video about it. I gave the reason that I was taking a step back because I realized I had more questions about the world than I did really answers or strong opinions. And I feel like this is kind of a spot that most men are in today. A significant number of women in a lot of cities, right? Like New York City, Los Angeles, I think maybe Chicago. There's a list of cities where women actually out-earn their male counterparts, right? So if you're a man, how do I date? Like somebody that makes more money than me, right? Am I paying for the date, even though most of you ladies make more than most of us fellas do? Like, really? Is that kind of what we're doing? Okay. Am I supposed to get married? Do I have enough money to get married? Am I supposed to be the breadwinner, even though both of us are working? How much say do I have in my family when we live in a time now of individualism and women kind of feeling like their control, that their body belongs to them and what they do is their own business? Okay, so what is my role as a husband and father if you're saying nothing I really say matters, right? Like, what does it mean to be a man? If women are providing for themselves, then okay, then my job as a man isn't to be a provider. We don't really protect anymore. We have police for that, and we have the military. So it's not like it was back in tribal days where you don't really need protection from me. So you don't need me to provide. You don't need me to protect. What do you need me for? And then women will say, no, we just want you. We're like, okay, but what does that mean? You want me for what? To do what? To play what role? I think it's okay for us to be confused. The feminist movement, and I say all the time, the first wave of the feminist movement, I think, was necessary as far as granting women the right to engage in civic society, have their own banks, right? Like, there was a time where I think a husband could like hit his wife if it was with a stick or an object that wasn't a certain measurement, thick or long or whatever. That stuff had to go. First wave, totally behind, right? Second wave, okay, right? I'm not a feminist scholar, so I don't really know all the waves, right? But I think even the second wave, I think you can kind of get me on board depending on what it is. Third wave, I know I'm definitely against because that's kind of like where things kind of got crazy. But first wave, definitely. Second wave, right? But again, what womanhood meant, what the role of women in society, it was allowed to expand. It was allowed to change, right? Women were allowed to kind of have these conversations, to kind of have, okay, what role do we want? What role do we want men to play? And that happened over a course of years. And I think as the role of women changed, it was inevitably going to impact men. I think it came delayed. I think, there was still plenty of spaces for men, but now that has changed, right? As we've seen a decline in male spaces, as we've seen the number of households in which boys grew up in where there's no father figure, that had an impact. Add on top of that, schools where I think elementary school teachers are overwhelmingly female now. So, you're a boy, you don't have a father in your home. You go to schools, you don't see that many men in there, right? You grow up in a space as a boy today where you don't really have that many male influences, or the men in your life, society has kind of restricted their influence to such a degree where you're kind of confused that, okay, what is my role supposed to be? And if women had however many years the feminist movement, let me look up how long was the feminist movement? According to ChatGPT, the first wave took off around the 1840s. Second wave, the 60s to the 80s. Then you had a third wave, the 90s to the 2000s. And the fourth wave is considered the 2010s to the present, right? And I definitely don't agree with that. But yeah, so women had from the 1840s until today to renegotiate what they thought it meant to be a woman, to renegotiate what they believe the role of a man is, to renegotiate what they believe society's obligation was to women, right? They've had this stretch of time to work all of this stuff out, and men haven't. And I think men are now starting from 1840 about, okay, what is my purpose here? And I think if it took feminists from 1840 until let's not even include now, right? Let's go from 1840 until the 1980s. If it took women from the 1840s to the 1980s to kind of get all of this stuff worked out, it's gonna take men from, I don't know, let's say we start this from 2016, Trump, right? It's gonna take men from 2016, that same amount of years, decades, however many decades that is. I'm not doing the math right now in my head because I'm doing my video. For us to work out the role of men, the role that we want women to play in our lives, the role that we believe society owes to us as men, right? Those same questions that women had to re-answer, men are gonna have to work these things out. And it's okay. It's totally okay. And I'm talking to the men right now. It's okay to not be okay. I have a lot more questions than answers right now about life, about my role in life, about why the fuck am I here to begin with, right? Is life worth me even living for the most part, right? Which can sound dark, but I think about it, right? What am I supposed to be doing? Why am I not married? Should I want to get married? Would I even be a good husband? Would I be a good father? I'm poor. I'm a working poor person. Does a working poor person deserve, or should a working poor man be looking to not be poor before he finds a wife? You hear all the time people say that poor people shouldn't date. I think about it. Should I be dating? I'm poor, right? Like, I am a poor black man living in America. There are plenty of you that are poor white men or, lower middle class, but even like upper class white, white dudes, Asian dudes, Hispanic dudes. And you don't know what we're supposed to be doing, what role we're supposed to be playing. But I think the people that expect us to have an answer, they're the ones that are wrong here. I don't think we're wrong. I think we're in the right to be confused, to be, introspective. You have the incels out there. They have their problems. You have the manosphere. Some things that I agree with the manosphere about. Some things that I think they're totally, off basis. As long as men aren't being violent physically to people around them, to women, to, children, to other men, I think us being reserved and introspective is not a bad thing. Like, everyone keeps saying, men aren't playing a role in society, or, we're withdrawing from society. Like, that's a terrible thing. And I just don't agree. It's not terrible if we are. Now, I do think that there are too many of us, fellas, that are, we're withdrawing, and we're withdrawing into video games, too much porn. Again, I play video games. I watch porn. What else? On the internet all day long. That is probably not helpful. What we really need is kind of I think a new philosophical movement that is going to kind of change the conversation around men for the most part, right? Like, there has to be a distinction between femininity and masculinity. There just has to be. I know liberals thought that if they kind of just, got rid of the gender roles and the boxes, everyone will be free and fall into their roles. I don't think that's true for men. I think men do need a direction. We do need a path. And sure, will some men be, constrained or maybe even harmed by that box? Probably so. But I think it's kind of a utilitarian approach. We kind of have to do what's best for the majority of men, not try to find something that, okay, this works for every individual man, because I don't think there's anything that will work for every individual man. I just don't. So again, fellas, it's okay. If you're a mom with a son, I'm going to tell you it's okay for your son to not be okay. Men are going to have to work this out. In many ways, I'm kind of inspired by the ugliness that I'm seeing as far as, some of the, really, really bad misogynistic posts and things of that nature, because men lash out. When men are uncomfortable or they're afraid or they're confused, we lash out. Some of that misogynistic stuff, that's actually a good sign, because it shows that men are aware that there is a problem that needs to be solved. And I think it's up to individuals like myself and other men who are, a lot older, more qualified, for us to say, hey, we don't have the answer. It's time for us to talk about roles, about purpose, about life, the same way that women did back during the feminist movement, and for us to kind of begin to recraft the role of manhood in Western society from this day until the rest of our days, right? So we'd love to hear from you fellas down below. Comment down below. Do you agree with me? Say, you know what, crew? I'm with you, man. Do you think I'm full of shit? Right? Do you think, no, we don't need to, forge a new role of masculinity. We need to go back to the traditional form of masculinity, right? Do you feel that way? I want to hear from everybody. You guys know I want this YouTube to be a conversation. I don't want it to be, a pulpit. I want to hear from you. So please, please, please give me your thoughts so that we can continue this dialogue. And ladies, you're allowed to comment below, right? Like, I'm talking about masculinity and about men, and primarily to men, but the internet is a free space, so feel free to comment. All right. Till next time, deuces.